The Hard Rock Empire is on the air. We are back with another week of podcasting excellence here on the Hard Rock Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. We are here, and it is now February, believe it or not. The month of January has come and gone, and we're not quite ready to leave January behind, though. We've got a couple weeks of music left to talk about for the month, and this week we're going to be talking about the music of January the 23rd, and another solid week in music as the music starts to ramp back up in the new year. We've also got a very big release we'll be talking about right off the top of the program today. I'm certainly looking forward to chatting about that one. Joining me in studio, as always, is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going, yeah. 1 month down already. It seems really hard to believe. I'm still looking back at 2025 and trying to remember what all I enjoyed about it. But yeah, we are in full swing now of 2026, and for me, kind of the first big release on the calendar this year happened on the 23rd. So certainly excited to talk about that.
Absolutely. Before we do that, just a reminder to join the Discord. Of course, that is pinned in both of the chats, and you can find out when we're going to be streaming, some of our new projects that will be coming up, and anything else just to join the discussion on everything. Stop by the Discord. We'd love to have you there as well. Just a reminder as well, throughout the program, if you are on Twitch, we will occasionally have some ads. Of course, if you're subscribed, you won't get the ads. On YouTube, you won't get the ads anyway, but we'll try not to have any major programming during the ads, so you won't miss a thing. You can just ride them out, and then, of course, we'll be back on the other side. Before we talk about kind of the week that was in new releases and get to our main picks for the week, as is the case on this podcast, when we have a major release that is a band that we spotlight on this podcast quite often, we tend to kind of pull it out and talk about it separately, and that's what we're going to do here in the open. And that was the final release, at least as far as we know, the final release from Megadeth, self-titled, 17th studio album, I believe, from the band. It released on the 23rd and has done very well. We just saw the announcement this afternoon that it did reach number one on the Billboard 200. It's been number one in several other countries as well, and the top five and a handful more. It was a very big push for this album to get to number one. We got several emails this week. Hey, if you haven't bought it, buy it because we're really close. So they knew that the numbers were there. You know, I'll get to Mike's thoughts in a moment because obviously he's our foremost expert on all things Megadeth. But I would say as someone who's a fan, but maybe just not quite that much of an expert on the band, I think the highest praise I can say about this album is it sounds like Megadeth. Like, that is, there are no surprises. Like, it's really good. Everything about it is tight. The lyrics are good. The guitars are great. Dave is Dave. Like, you know, it wasn't a band that was. They found the right balance between giving people who've been a longtime fan of the band what they're looking for, without sounding like they're, you know, basically taking the easy way out. Like, well, this is it. We're gonna coast and we're gonna cruise on it, because so many bands do, and you understand why, because they know what their fans want. So we'll just coast to the end, but that wouldn't really be Dave, I don't think, to do that. And because of that, I think they have given all metal fans, but especially the fans of Megadeth, something that they can really hang their hat on as an outstanding final release, if indeed it does prove to be the final album for the band. But that's just my general thoughts. Mike, I know you've listened to it a handful of times already. What's your take as you kind of think about this album?
Yeah, you know, I've been pretty bad lately. Not that I haven't listened to all of their prior albums, but I kind of feel like after maybe Endgame and then maybe once again with Dystopia, I actually like sat down and listened to it intentionally with the lyrics in front of me. I kind of dropped off doing that, but this time around I really wanted to make sure I did that just to get the full experience, just to listen to it the way I would have listened to Countdown to Extinction or Euthanasia or Cryptic Writings. I feel like we don't always consume music that way anymore in the modern age. It's more of like background noise and not something you're fully focused on. So I really wanted to do that, and I did. And I feel like this album did a really good job of being kind of a retrospective of what Megadeth has been over the years. I think you can point to specific tracks and say, when I listen to this, I think of this album, or I think of this song. Like, kind of going. I don't want to go through all the tracks, but this could take a while. But like track 1, Tipping Point, really high energy opener. There's kind of this growl at the end of the bridge lyrics that he does that makes you think killing is my business. You look at the second track, I Don't Care, which, maybe not lyrically the strongest track on the album. I think musically it's really good, but it has that same kind of emotion and personality as something like Peace Sells But Who's Buying or Liar from So Far So Good So What. And you kind of get that throughout the album. Like a song like Hey God to me feels like something that could have been on Countdown to Extinction or Euthanasia, kind of mid-tempo. There are other tracks like that, Puppet Parade, Another Bad Day. The other thing that I took away from this is I feel like this was even more introspective lyrically than a lot of Megadeth albums. I mean, not that Dave shies away from that, but you look at songs like Hey God, Another Bad Day, Puppet Parade, like you really feel like you're getting kind of what Dave's thinking at this point in time. Hey God's probably the best example of that, where you're like, I think you kind of take this song as years ago in Countdown to Extinction, he was talking to himself in a song, Sweating Bullets, and now you have this where he's reaching out to God. Like, I think he realizes at this stage of the game that he's a guy that, even though he's incredibly blessed with the success he's had, he's kind of self-sabotaged himself numerous times in life, and maybe he hasn't always lived up to the person he wanted to be, and I think that it resonates because I think in reality there are a lot more Megadeths in the world than there are Metallicas.
Yeah.
People who, even though on paper, if you look at some of the lineups Dave's put out there, they've had stronger musicians than Metallica, but they never quite seem to break that ceiling. I think that speaks to people, and I think that's something this album really does, is it kind of humanizes Dave even more, maybe.
Well, and I think in another track, to me that was very kind of poignant was the last one, the last note. Because it does kind of feel like a farewell note to the business, that he's just kind of putting it all in perspective and kind of laying it all out there. But yeah, it is definitely an album where when he sat down to write it, and obviously there's a lot of co-credits on there, so, they certainly had a lot of help in that process, but it definitely felt like something where he knew this was it and kind of wanted to make this a final statement on his career, and maybe, like you said, a tinge of regret of some of the things that sidetracked him, and maybe also a tinge of gratitude, because for every sidetrack that, okay, maybe if he doesn't do this, they do get to Metallica level, there's also the possibility of several times that this could have all been over. Like, he may have never played guitar again, after his hand injury, and everything else he's been through that was self-destructive that could have absolutely ended the band and maybe ended him prematurely. The fact that he's made it to this point to kind of go out on his own terms is also, I think, an underlying theme that kind of runs through this album.
For sure. And I think when you've seen some of the, not necessarily even untimely deaths, but just some of the major acts over the years, people pass away, like, you can't help but feel that way. I do kind of wish, and, I listened to, obviously, Ride the Lightning as the bonus track, even though it's on every release. And then the two bonus tracks that are kind of exclusive, Bloodlust, which was on the Target retail copy, and then Nobody's Hero, the digital exclusive track. Those all take place after the last note in the track order. I wish they didn't.
Yeah.
I know they're bonus tracks, but I want the last note to be the last thing I hear. I think it makes a lot more sense. Like, it's kind of odd that he goes out in this really, like, poignant ending line, and then the riff to Ride the Lightning picks up.
Yeah.
Wait, time out. I get it is what it is, and, you're supposed to just imagine the last note being the last note. But
right.
For the listener, it's kind of strange.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I don't know if that's just something that's not possible with bonus tracks. They just have to go on the end, is the way they press.
It could be the matter of there are so many other variations to how this thing's being created. They didn't want to add one more variable, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of the other note. And obviously, most of our discussion so far has just been about the album itself. And again, if you're a metal fan, you should pick it up.
Yeah.
If you're a Megadeth fan, I'm sure you already have one of the 74,000 variations of this release that has been put out. There was a Facebook post, I think, that kind of listed all of the different ways you can get this album. And it would be very easy for me to be critical of that, but at the same time, the album got to number one, so it kind of feels like mission accomplished that maybe having all of these unique copies, because I mean, you're someone who has bought it more than once, and I'm sure you're in
I'll
not
bet on average, I probably didn't spend any more than anyone else, if not actually quite a bit less.
right. And I was going to say, I'm sure you are still in the low end of what people spent on this album, considering all the crazy releases.
And considering I didn't buy any of the really like ultra premium versions, I mean, they had the, let's see, someplace called Bad World had a Magma Lava Filled 2 LP for $75. CD Japan, their version was like $55. There was the one, yeah, the one on Megadeth store, which was like the ash-filled vinyl that included like ash from the guitar string or something like that.
Wow.
It was like $250. I didn't bother with that. I went with the Megadeth store like smoke-colored one. Then I bought the Target CD for the bonus track, and then the digital download for the bonus track too, which worth it. I think people should definitely check out the bonus tracks. I wonder what the overall opinion of them are, because to me, I think they're stronger than a few of the tracks that made the album. I just wonder if they didn't feel like they fit on the album. Like because to me, if I was going to take Bloodlust and Nobody's Hero and plug them in on the album, it would probably be to replace Obey the Call and I Am War. Those songs are fine, but I think these are stronger. I don't know if tone-wise they fit. I mean, Bloodlust is a song about a vampire, I think, based on what I listened to. Nobody's Hero was kind of interesting because it felt like a biography about the character that the song Killing Is My Business is about, so I think that would have been fine. But then again, I guess you want good songs that don't make the official standard release to actually drive sales of the special editions. But yeah, I mean, if this is it, it's a solid album.
Yeah, they've done well, and it'll be really interesting to see, because obviously the next step is the farewell tour, and however long that lasts. But it'll be interesting to see what off of this album makes the cut. Like, do we get Ride the Lightning live in concert? You know, does he? You know, it'll be interesting to see what he decides to pull off of this album, because it feels like, you know, there are, you know, a song like Let There Be Shred, like, you know, it's got a cheesy name, but like it's just so
it does shred.
It does shred. It's so quintessential Megadeth to me. Like, it felt like, you know, because you've got some very serious songs on this album, and I feel like that was one that was kind of like, let's have some fun. Let's just remember this. You know, yeah, we've got some serious tones talking about walking away, maybe some regret, but here's us just shredding.
Well, some of Megadeth's best songs are a bunch of solos like strung together by lyrics that really clearly aren't the main focus.
Like Hangar 18
Hangar
is one
18,
that comes to mind.
Like that is, we need words to go with all these solos. And then Nick Menz is like, I like aliens, and they wrote a song about aliens. You know, it worked. It's a great song, but you don't go back and say, strongest lyrical effort right there, greatest chorus of all time.
Right.
No, not at all. You know, I will mention the Ride the Lightning cover. It's interesting because unless you told me that Dave was going to dramatically speed up Ride the Lightning, the product I ended up with is pretty much what I expected it to be. And I you know, there are people online that feel like it sounded too dry compared to the Metallica version, the mix or something. I think it sounds like what Megadeth sounds like.
Yeah.
You can't really compare the vocals because Dave's in his 60s. James Hetfield was like early 20s when they did Ride the Lightning. Not really a fair comparison.
No.
I thought overall, Dave sounded all right on this album.
Yeah. I think that was maybe the thing I was most concerned about. Because, again, as we've talked about, Dave is Dave, and he's got a unique sound. He's not a great vocalist.
He's a great guitar player.
He's a great guitar player.
And he sings sometimes.
Like, but I was concerned that, you know, was that going to hold this album back? Because, again, guy who's maybe not the strongest vocalist, not going to get stronger when he gets into his 60s. No. Again, also considering everything he's been through. But I thought overall the vocals didn't take away in any way. I thought it was what you would expect from Dave, especially at this point, and I thought they were completely fine. So yeah, I thought the Ride Lightning cover was fine.
Yeah,
it was supposed to sound like a Megadeth song to me. I think that's if you're covering that, it's almost as a what if we would have had this song, and you know, instead of me being part of it with Metallica, like what if I would have brought it with me?
I think he's in a different place for the most part than what he was when Because, I mean, originally Mechanics was Metallica, and it was really fast. Like, it was supposed to be as fast as it was on Killing Is My Business, I believe.
Yeah.
And every other instance where he used riffs from back then and on older albums, yeah, he sped them up because I think he was trying to make a statement. I don't think he is as much anymore.
No.
To me, it sounded like he really was kind of doing this because, A, he wrote at least the guitar on that song, and I think he kind of meant it in a respectful way. It wasn't like well, I can do this better than you guys, or else it would have been a completely different song. One other thing about it is, and I think this is why when I compare this to the newest Metallica album, I feel better about this album, is that the songs don't overstay their welcome.
No.
Like, these are your typical, like, classic Megadeth, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of solos in here and still get out in 4 minutes. Like, I'm totally on board with that. There are 2 songs that break the 5-minute mark. One of them's Ride the Lightning.
Yeah.
And the other one, the last note, is just meant to be a longer song.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Again, going back to where I started, to me, this just felt like Megadeth. There was nothing in it that was a swerve or something that they were trying to do something that they shouldn't be trying to do. Like, I think if you're a fan of the band, this is exactly what you're going to be looking for. There will always be critics because it's music, and music is subjective.
Yeah.
But overall, I think they've done a great job with this. I'm excited to see the farewell tour. I know we'll certainly try to get to at least one show, maybe more, just because I've never been disappointed with a Megadeth show. It is always a great time, and they always sound amazing live. So definitely would like to make sure we get to see them at least one more time before they hang it up. And I feel like that will be, I think we're looking at probably into 2027 at least before he actually calls it quits. So, that's our stuff on Megadeth. We wanted to spotlight it. We'll do this a handful of times during the year when there's a band that releases something that we really want to talk about outside of our new picks. But I encourage you to pick it up. It's really good.
I think the next thing that I know of is the Sonata Arctica single.
Yeah, that is. I'm very excited for that. I'm excited for a potential new album from those guys. Yeah. And hope we get to see them in concert, since that got derailed last year. I was so mad about when their tour in Cleveland.
That was cursed. I mean, first they get sick, and then Symphony X's bus breaks down.
Right, and they get to Cleveland, and it's just was just not meant to be. But I would still like to see Symphony X as well. I kind of got into their music in the preparation for that concert, and I didn't get to see them, although Russell Allen, certainly a big fan of his from a lot of different places. But before we get into what is kind of the typical meat and potatoes of our podcast, we do need to step aside for a quick break on Twitch. Again, if you're listening on Twitch, hang in there. We're not going to do anything during the break except chatting a little bit. You won't miss any of the content. If you are on YouTube, you're going to hear us chat a little bit while we're waiting for Twitch to come back. We'll be back in about 90 seconds. And we will get to the rest of the new music for January the 23rd. So we'll get that ad break started on Twitch. And once that fires, it is underway. But, I'm really excited for the new Sonata Arctica. I'm sure it'll be interesting to see 2026 what we have in the way of big band releases, because it does feel like there are a few of the bands that we're fans of that are kind of due for something new in the new year. So
I haven't really checked in the future to see who's... I mean, I'm sure Loudwire, I could just scroll straight down their list and find and kind of cherry pick the ones that I'm really interested in. But, it's off to a good start with the Megadeth album, I think.
I was really blown away by it. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say it's maybe one of the top 5 albums they've ever released, but it wasn't bad. Like, because you just don't know with a band that's been doing it that long, and Dave getting up there and everything else. And you also don't know what his vision for the final album is going to be. Is he thinking experimental? Is he going to go off there? But it wasn't. It was very much right down the middle, and I think because of that, I think most fans are going to be pleased with the output.
Yeah, and that was kind of my thought. It's not my favorite Megadeth album, but if you told me their 17th album after over 40 years doing it, I would like this much, I'd be fine with that. That is totally okay with me. I feel like it's going to end up being more memorable than their prior one, The Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. The title track to that one I really enjoyed, but I don't know if I just didn't listen to it enough, but I don't remember a whole lot about it.
I was getting ready to say, I don't know how often I listen to much of that album, so it might be worth maybe going back and revisiting it to see if time has been kind to maybe some of those tracks. But
I do need to go back and listen to the whole catalog because I wonder how I'd feel about some of those albums along like Super Collider, Endgame, 13. Like, I know the first like 5 or 6 albums so well, but anything past United Abominations, I think they didn't live in my CD player.
sounds like a tier list idea for maybe a Twitch stream at some point.
Possibly,
to tier list the Megadeth albums. But we're going to be doing more of that kind of stuff soon. So once I kind of get through this busy stretch I'm in, we're going to get started with some more content. And again, some of it will be on Twitch, some of it will be on YouTube, some of it may be both. We'll let you know. And again, that's why you need to join our Discord. It's pinned in both chats. That's where you'll kind of find out where things are going on. But it is time to get to the rest of the new music for this week, which means it's time for me to paste Mike's playlist into both of the chats. And the playlist, of course, is the music that Mike pulls from the new release lists that he checks out, and he will go through and basically take one track off of all the new albums that he is interested in and that we're interested in and puts them on this YouTube playlist. And then we go through there and we'll pick one new release each week to spotlight on the podcast. And obviously Megadeth was the headliner of this week and certainly delivered in what we expected from them. But before we get to your pick for this week, anything else jump out at you?
Yeah, so we had the classic Canadian metal band Helix with a new one. They've been around since 1974. I think it's their 16th album, Scrap Metal. Definitely worth a listen. And kind of on the other end of the spectrum, and someone who I didn't realize has already released 7 albums. Poppy's got a new one.
Yeah.
Empty Hands, her 7th studio album. I had no idea she'd been around that long.
Her music is interesting because it feels very much all over the board. So, like,
Yeah.
there's almost always going to be something on her new album you're probably going to enjoy, but you might not enjoy the whole album front to back.
There might be something that you actually hate
yeah.
equally as much as the thing you enjoyed, weirdly enough. She's very all over the place, and it's interesting.
It is. Her albums are never boring. That is a fact. But yeah,
as far as old stuff goes, re-releases, it's not music I'm interested in, but I mentioned this happening once before, and I think it's worth calling out. Relapse Records re-releasing the catalog of the hardcore band from Japan, Rocky and the Sweden,
okay.
which different name, not really my style. I'm not the hardcore punk guy, but still really cool to see a record label kind of bringing this stuff over and making it available pretty easily.
Yeah, I love that. I would love to see more of that kind of stuff.
As far as interesting names, all we have that that caught my attention are a new one from the band Handful of Hate, their newest album, Soulless Abominations. And finally, an EP from the band Trash Pillow. That is the Raw EP, also available on the 23rd. So yeah, there's something out there for everybody.
Yeah, whether you're looking for a cool sound or a cool name or whatever it may be, there is something for everybody. And of course, the Megadeth album certainly at the top of that list. But it is time to get to the 2 bands we're going to pick this week. And Mike, you, as always, will get things started. So what do you have for us this week?
Always a fan of power metal being made here from the United States. Need more of that. We have a band that formed in California. It's their 4th full-length studio album. They are Death Dealer, and that album is Reign of Steel.
Yeah, this was one that I listened to the playlist track. I haven't had a chance to go back and listen to the whole album, but they got a great sound, and to me, it's if you're a power metal guy, you're going to really dig this album.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys formed in 2012. They're kind of a super group. Everyone in the band has had an extensive history throughout numerous years and bands. Consists of Stu Marshall on guitars from Empires of Eden and Night Legion. Ross the Boss playing guitars, ex-Manowar. He was there, I think, for 8 years back in the 80s. Sean Peck on vocals from the band Cage. And Steve Bolognese, easy for me to say. He's the drummer. He's from Into Eternity, Them, and Witherfall, all great bands. And finally, Mike LaPond on bass. He is currently in Symphony X, among so many other acts. We just mentioned them earlier, so that was kind of cool. First off, it's always worth mentioning when a band just nails the cover art for an album. And this one, if this doesn't get you ready to listen to some awesome power metal, you got mech suits, women, guns, monsters. What more could you ask for?
Nothing. It's really all there for you.
My concern, and one of the reviewers I saw made some comment, kind of hoping that it's not AI. So I looked it up. I went on to their record label, Massacre's website, and There's credits for the artwork, Dusan Markovic, and additional graphics by Ali Yarborough. So sounds like it's done by humans, so we can rest easy there. Really well done. JP from MetalRules.com points out that these guys show a clear influence from Judas Priest's Painkiller, and that's undoubtedly the case. If you listen to it, you hear that for sure. The music's intense, the vocals are powerful. It's kind of what you'd expect from a group with this much experience that these guys have. It's really well made. I don't want to compare it to the Megadeth album because they're two different bands doing two different things, but it was similar in the fact that it kept me invested throughout the whole album. Like there was never a point where I just was kind of like, man, are we still listening to this? It's not over yet. Just really solid stuff, worth a listen. Standout tracks include Devil's Triangle, Riding on the Wings, Raging Wild and Free, Compelled, and the track that we're going to listen to, Blast the Highway.
Check these guys out. This is Death Dealer with Reign of Steel. This is the 6th track off of this album, Blast the Highway. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, that's awesome stuff. Again, first off, YouTube Music, please normalize all your music so it all comes out at the same volume. Like, there's no reason that I set it in one spot and it's not the same every time.
No.
Like, that's something you should be able to do. But no, this is great power metal. Like you said, it's very clear that you have a band that is experienced, and I think it brings a level of polish to it. But also, it's just everything is just kind of really good. It's not, there's not that one thing that it feels like it's pulling it back. The vocals are great, guitars are great, the drums are great. It's just, it all ties together, and it really gives you this product at the end is as good a power metal as we've had come out so far here in 2026.
It definitely makes it stand out from some of the other stuff that came out this week, and I think that's why I went that direction as opposed to some of the other pretty good stuff that came out too.
Yeah, again, a lot of good stuff in that area, but these guys I thought really stood out, and it's definitely worth checking out. These guys, Mike's pick for this week, really strong in the power metal genre. We're going to head to melodic rock, which I always enjoy visiting, and we're headed to a country that's known for some great rock. We are headed to Brazil for our next band. This is the melodic rock band from Sao Paulo, Brazil. This is Nite Stinger with What the Night is All About, and that night in both cases spelled N-I-T-E. So you know kind of what you're in for here. It's definitely that kind of throwback sound to the 80s. These guys were formed in 2020. This is their second full-length album. From the PR for the album, it says drawing inspiration from icons like Motley Crue, Rat, Def Leppard, and Poison. Once again, Nite Stinger pays tribute to nightlife, wild parties, and roaring down the highway on a motorbike. So, yeah, I mean, this is kind of what you're looking for. What's interesting, though, and I kind of agree with Defender to the Faith Metal, who had a review of this album. To me, even though all those bands, I'm sure, were very much influential, this album feels very Dokken driven. Like, it feels like there's a lot of inspiration. There were a lot of comparisons to George Lynch guitar pieces in this. I totally agree with that. They also compare them to a couple of other bands that we have spotlighted on this podcast that are kind of modern bands in this genre, like Heat and Crazy Licks. Totally see the comparisons there as well. The review, this was an interesting one. The review also praised vocalist Jack Farrer for being more reserved than some in the genre. Obviously, melodic rock, melodic metal sometimes has these big, powerful, over-the-top vocals. This kind of was more reserved, and they were praising that because it really felt like it didn't overshadow the music, that it allowed the guitars and the drums and everything to kind of have their own space, but the vocals were still really strong. They just weren't trying to take over the entire mix of the song, which was interesting. The members of the band include Farrer on vocals, Bento Mello on bass, Yvonne Landgraf on lead and rhythm guitars, Bruno Marx not to be confused with Bruno Mars on rhythm and lead guitars, and Leandro Araujo on drums. It's a great album. It feels a little more AOR or rock than AOR. I think there's definitely a rock element to it, so it's definitely toward that end of the spectrum. It doesn't feel dated, which is always one of those kind of things I grade these type of albums on. If it feels like you're just ripping from the mid '80s, I don't really enjoy that as much as a band is trying to do it in a modern way, and I think these guys have done that. Standout tracks include Your Own Way to Be, Love and Freedom, Only You, and the song we're going to listen to on the podcast is You Know Why. So let's check out Nite Stinger. This is their new album, What the Night is All About. This is the opening track off of that album, You Know Why. Let's listen to a little bit of that now. Yeah, I mean, obviously a little short part of the chorus there, but I wanted to get that guitar solo in there. The guitars certainly carry their share of the load in this album. But like I said, overall, really solid album, and definitely a band to kind of keep an eye on that's kind of up and coming in Brazil. But Mike, your thoughts on these guys?
Yeah, you can definitely hear Dokken there for sure. And I think if you're going to mold your guitar style after anyone, George Lynch is certainly a good option. I also think that in a lot of ways, Don Dokken's vocals, unless he's doing the high-pitched stuff and like the harmonies and the choruses, his voice was always fairly subdued too. It felt way more relaxed than some of his contemporaries, and they were a great band. I think highly underrated as far as his musicianship goes.
Yeah, totally agree. So if that's the path that Nite Stinger is looking to head down, I think that's a pretty good idea. So definitely check those guys out. Their new album out on January the 23rd. Those are the new releases for this week. It's time to get to the vault, where Mike and I will each give you an album to check out. Mike is continuing on his journey through Sonic Temple. That'll be coming up in May, which now is only 3 months away. I mean, it's obviously a little more than 3 months away, but now that we're in February, it's a month closer. So Mike has gone through several days and several stages to try to pick an act off of the stage in a time frame that is something he wants to check out, maybe something you would want to check out. So Mike, where are we off to for Sonic Temple this time?
Yeah, so for today, we are looking at Stage 4 Saturday. Definitely a theme here when you look at the bands listed. Headlining that is Architects. They are from the UK. They are a metalcore band. We have Amity Affliction from Australia, who are post-hardcore and metalcore. August Burns Red from Pennsylvania, metalcore and Christian metal. The Ghost Inside from California, metalcore, melodic hardcore. Make Them Suffer from Australia, metalcore, progressive metalcore, and symphonic deathcore. Alpha Wolf from Australia, metalcore, new metal, and beatdown hardcore. Term I just learned like 2 weeks ago. Alt from Sweden, progressive metalcore, and gent. And finally, the band that I ultimately ended up picking because they sounded more different than every other band, comparatively speaking, and it's a band from France. They had an album in 2025. We are going with the metalcore, progressive metalcore gent band. They are Novelists, and that 2025 album is Coda.
I think if you're not a fan of some sort of core type metal, you're probably not going to enjoy the music on this stage.
Yeah, and metalcore is such a hit or miss thing with me. There are some metalcore bands that I really, really like. I just, in limited sample size of what I heard, a lot of these bands weren't really doing it for me, and I got to these guys, and they were different enough where I was like, okay, you know what, we'll give this one a shot. This seems to be the best bet for me. Band consists of Floricin Duran on lead vocals and backing vocals, Amel Duran on drums, Nicholas Delestrade on bass and backing vocals, Pierre Danel on rhythm guitar, and Camille Contreras on lead vocals. So this is a band, they've been around since, I think, 2013. Their first 10 years, they had two different vocalists. In 2023, their second vocalist left, and they had auditions for his replacement. Ultimately, that spot went to Camille Contreras. Big departure, bringing in a female vocalist after having two male vocalists before that. Worth noting, this did all happen more than a year before Linkin Park showed back up with Emily Armstrong, so it wasn't something that they were inspired by Linkin Park. I was reading a review on this album from the website thesoundboardreviews.com, and he kind of made that point first, like you would presume that maybe that was what they were thinking, or maybe they're trying to sound more like Spirit Box. But he points out that, for one, this happened before Linkin Park, and two, there wasn't really any fanfare around this. Like, no one really made a big deal about the change, so clearly that there wasn't any kind of ulterior motives. At least you wouldn't assume that. I've not heard this band prior with any of their other lead singers, so I'm going into it fresh. I don't know how their current fan base felt about the change. Can't really judge them based on that. But I would be lying if I said the singer didn't play a part in why I chose them, because I found that her harsh vocals weren't necessarily as grating as some of the other bands, and her normal clean singing voice is really good. Like, I think that metalcore, it's so easy to kind of fall into that same sound that a lot of metalcore bands have, and I think she kind of gives them a distinction away from that. Let's see. These guys are the first band up on stage 4 on Saturday, so from a timing standpoint, catching them should be pretty easy compared to some of the later bands who might be going head to head with bands like Creator, Sepultura, Marilyn Manson, Alter Bridge, Bush, Motionless in White, etc. It's really strong metalcore. It's not. I don't love every song because of it being metalcore, but I think there's enough here that if you enjoy clean female vocals plus heavy music, there could be something there for you. Standout tracks, as far as I'm concerned, were "Say My Name," "Coda," "All for Nothing," "Maldición de la Bruja," "Sleepless Nights," and "K.O." Yeah, if you're not familiar with any of the bands on stage 4 on Saturday, definitely start with these guys and go from there. I think you'll get something out of it.
Probably a sign that if you can't get into these guys, it's probably not going to get easier for you to get into the rest. This is like the entry way. Like, if you may want to enjoy what these guys do before you start looking at the later bands.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair strategy.
So yeah, check those guys out. Really cool. Just to see something in that genre, because again, I'm definitely, if Mike's not a huge fan, I'm probably less of a fan than he is of that style. But yeah, it's interesting to see kind of what they sound like. I might have to go check some of that out. We do need to step aside for one more quick 90-second break on Twitch before we wrap this up, and then we'll get to my vault pick on the other side of this break. So if you are on Twitch and you are watching us, hang tight. You're not gonna miss a thing. We'll come back with my vault pick and wrap up the episode. And if you're on YouTube, you'll get to hear Mike and I chat a bit during this 90-second ad break, and we will wrap up the podcast on the other side. But the ad break is underway. I know you mentioned, obviously, you're going to continue on with this vault thing, but I think you had mentioned maybe trying to tackle another one as well. What did you have in mind potentially?
Yeah, I mentioned it in the Discord. I was thinking about maybe kind of taking your original concept of the annual thing and starting at 1969 and seeing what I can get into. I think for me, it's not because I know that I have a lot of favorite albums from that time period. It's more about, I know there are a lot of classic albums from classic bands that I've not listened to.
Yeah.
And I think this would be a good opportunity to kind of educate myself on stuff that's kind of pre my wheelhouse.
Yeah, I think there's, obviously I went through and picked a lot of stuff, and I think there's so much stuff that I could almost find a different way to go about it and go back through and not repeat anything. Because I have, kind of a similar but a little bit different thought. Another idea that actually you brought up that I'm thinking of doing next.
I have ideas.
Is taking a band that I like and basically going through their entire catalog.
Yeah.
Because there are so many bands that either they're either a greatest hits band to me, and I've never listened to all their albums. 2, I know they're big hit albums, but then don't know anything else they've done. Or 3, they've maybe come back with new members, or they've just never stopped making music, and I just am not aware of all that stuff. Chicago was a band that kind of came to mind because that's how I started the 1969 gimmick, was with the Chicago Transit Authority album. So, there's probably 30-some albums that Chicago has released over the years, and so
they've numbered most of them, so it should be easy.
Should be easy to find. I'm incredibly grateful for that. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But there are also bands, a band that comes up a lot when I think about this is a band like REO Speedwagon, who, of course,
Yeah.
sounded like a much different band before Kevin Cronin got there and took over as the lead vocalist. That's why we've talked about it before on the podcast, the song Riding the Storm Out.
I overheard a commercial recently with that song, and it was the original version of it.
Which you never hear anywhere, which
wow.
is kind of crazy, honestly, that they used it. So I don't know if that's a sign of the whole falling out with Kevin Cronin that REO Speedwagon had.
Didn't they get back together and do a show, though?
I think they
after all
might
of that?
have.
Like,
I feel like there was maybe some mending of fences, but I don't know if that has anything to do with it or if the label that owns the original version licensed it out.
possibly. I mean, if you can, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, so very interesting. But a lot of really interesting stuff coming up on the Vault. A lot of great music out there from bands we like, maybe bands we don't know, and we'll be getting to all that over the next few weeks. So definitely worth checking out. Let's wrap up this week's podcast with my edition of the Vault. And I'm continuing through the Frontiers bands. Not too much longer, though. We are down to the letter X. And as I mentioned last week, there were only 2 X bands that were listed on the Wikipedia page for Frontiers. So it kind of limited the options. So we went with one of them this week, and that is a rock band out of Los Angeles. They are X-Drive with Get Your Rock On. This is an interesting one. And it's not terribly surprising for Frontiers because we have seen this path before where you have a bunch of kind of well-known musicians get together with maybe an unknown vocalist, or in this case, it's a guitarist, and they all kind of come together and they do this Frontiers thing, and then in some cases that they don't do anything else, and that's going to seems to be the case here. This album was released on August 22nd, 2014. From the PR from Frontiers, X-Drive is one of the most exciting rock projects to emerge from Los Angeles in a long time that has come out of nowhere to sign a worldwide deal with Frontiers Records. The debut CD is called Get Your Rock On, a stellar collection of 12 tracks that will have your heart reeling and your finger reaching for the replay button. I don't know where the replay button is on my radio in my car, but I have to figure that out. This clearly had a lot of fanfare when it came out. As I mentioned to Mike before we started, the music video to the song California debuted on Blabbermouth's website. So clearly, this had a big push. It was a new band centered around guitar player Jeremy Bruner, an organ transplant, who basically put this debut album together. Was joined on here by James Lomenzo, of course. To list a few of his projects: White Lion, Megadeth, Black Label Society, singer Keith St. John from Burning Rain, Lynch Mob, Montrose, and drummer Fred Fisher from Midline. It was produced by Andy Johns, the legendary Led Zeppelin engineer. Sadly, this was Andy Johns' last project because he passed away in 2013, so he was able to get this all done before his passing. It has a sleaze rock feel, but it kind of drifts out of that to more of an AOR sound at times to me, which, again, not too surprising with Frontiers. That's kind of their thing. But it's got great vocal harmonies, great music, as you would expect. There's a lot of talent involved in this album. But it just looks like this was it for them. Their Facebook page hasn't been updated since 2016. I searched for Jeremy Bruner. I didn't really find anything as far as him doing anything new. Couldn't find any of their tracks on YouTube Music, which is interesting because their last couple of Facebook posts mentioned them being back in the studio. So it kind of looked like maybe they were working toward a new album around 2016, 2017, and it never came to fruition. But they just kind of disappeared. But for a one-off album, I think you'll enjoy it if you're a fan of this type of music. So definitely worth checking out. Standout tracks include Get Your Rock On, Steppin' on the Rock, California, and Turn the Noise Down. Yeah, we've seen it with Frontiers before. They put this together. They produce something that's enjoyable, and then it just kind of disappears off the face of the earth, which is kind of wild to me.
Yeah, it's really amazing just the quantity of quality music that they've put out from people that you would never have heard of or never hear from again, or like you mentioned, they're notable people with one kind of extra newcomer in the band that releases something. Like, there's so many configurations to that, but it all somehow ends up working out and the music's solid. I was kind of looking up this band and I saw a review from the album and someone referenced James Lomenzo as just ex-White Lion. He's actually been in Megadeth longer than White Lion, oddly enough, at this point. Also didn't realize that another former Megadeth alum, Jimmy DeGrasso, also played in White Lion for a couple years.
Oh, okay.
Had no idea.
Yeah, White Lions had a lot of members as well.
You can't, if you'd have told someone in like 1988 that members of White Lion would have one day been in Megadeth, I don't think you would have possibly believed that.
No, those two bands really couldn't be any different.
No.
But again, I think that goes back to, and maybe kind of an exclamation point on this episode, is the level of musicianship that Megadeth has had over the years compared to even the other big four bands. And not take anything away from them, because obviously they're all great in their own right, but the people that Dave's been able to bring in and then subsequently move on from is just some of the best musicians. And it's not always like the guys you would think of to come play in a thrash band. Like, it's just these guys that have this almost a PhD in music, that they come in and they can do these things that are just totally unlike anybody else.
Yeah, I think if you look down the list of their guitarists over the years and just search for them on YouTube, I think one of their former guitarists that I think sometimes gets overlooked is Chris Broderick.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like, you look at some of the stuff he did on YouTube and the stuff he's done with other bands. I mean, that dude is just phenomenal. Then you got someone like Kiko, who's just totally on a different wavelength. Like, obviously Marty Friedman has his own style and just the way he plays is different than everybody else. Like, just no shortage of talent, even going back as far as the original days with Chris Poland and Gar Samuelson. But yeah, if you're not going to have a solid lineup throughout your entire run, you might as well just get the best people you can find and see what you can create with them.
It's kind of like Dave created the format for Frontiers in reverse. Like, I'm the guy that's always going to be in it, and I'm just going to keep bringing in these really talented people to play with, and we're going to make great music, but it may not always be the same lineup of people.
Yeah, it's and I wonder what, at the end of the day, what would you feel better about? I just, because there's something to be said for having that same core the entire ride, but I think in terms of keeping the sound interesting, having the rotation does something too. So I don't know.
I think in addition to a tier list of Megadeth albums, an interesting one for you especially, because obviously you really know this collection better than I do and better than most, would be the definitive Megadeth lineup.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So that could be a whole episode of a podcast on its own.
It's tough because the quick and easy answer would be, well, the Rust in Peace lineup, obviously. It's their best album.
Right.
But I don't think that's really fair, because they're the ones who created Rust in Peace. That doesn't mean that any of the other members at any point in time couldn't have created something at that level, because I'm not about to start suggesting that any one guitarist or drummer is better than the other.
It wouldn't necessarily be a better, I don't think, but maybe just if you had to put together four guys that, okay, this is Megadeth. If you wanted the one lineup to be, steady through the whole time of Megadeth, who would that be?
It hurts because I feel like I need more Nick Menza material to really gauge how I feel about him compared to someone like Dirk or Gar.
Maybe an interesting exercise.
I mean, they had Chris Adler on one of their albums playing drums. Dirk's amazing. If you look up stuff that he does on YouTube, he's a ridiculous drummer too. Man, it'd be tough.
It would be for sure, but we'll see. Lots of interesting ideas. Coming up next week on The Vault for me, we're going to the second X band, another band I know nothing about. It's going to be a band called X Origin. It's certainly an interesting looking logo. They draw on influences from Giant, Toto, Foreigner, and Yes. So I think we're going to take a different end of the spectrum next week for X Origin. So I hope you will join us for that coming up as we are getting to the end of the Frontiers bands on The Vault. But it is time to bring this episode to a close. Appreciate you joining us on this edition of the Hard Rock Empire. We'll be back with you again next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. The music of January the 30th is on tap for next week as we wrap up the month of January coming up next week. Really excited to see what the last week of the month brings us in the new hard rock and heavy metal. Big thanks to Mike, as always, for his hard work on this podcast. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of the podcast, and a big thanks to you whenever and wherever you are listening to the podcast. But that wraps up things for this week. We'll talk to you again next Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. But until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Hard Rock Empire.